Hello, I'm Todd McCluskey, acupuncturist in Washington, D.C. This is the second of a 4-video series on needling. The first video was on intention that laid the philosophical groundwork of where I come from with needling. The second one today is going to be on a specific needle technique. The third and the fourth video are going to be on different dimensions of body mechanics. The third video is going to be one on hands, how to utilize your second hand in acupuncture. And then the fourth is going to be on your entire body. So how do you incorporate your entire body into your needling, whether you're looking at your feet, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, or even your breath? How does that all come to bear? In reality, all 4 of these things are happening simultaneously when you needle. However, it's difficult to speak about them all at the same time, so I decided to break it down into these 4 components. Now, without further ado, we're going to get to our needling technique. Well, one more little thing. When we're looking at needling techniques, the way I would suggest you think about them is that the needle techniques themselves are almost like primary colors. So it could be like, today we're studying the color blue. But when you go into clinic, you might do that technique a little bit differently every single time. You can even say philosophically, every time you needle somebody, it's a different technique in a sense. Yet, at the same time, you were looking at basic strategies, basic principles, kind of like primary colors on a color wheel. You take a couple primary colors, 3, and you can make an infinite variety of colors. This is the same thing with needle technique. You don't have to learn 20 or 30 or 40 needle techniques. You just have to know a few basic ones that you can then build on and interchange. And when you get down to it, after you get good at a lot of these different ones, they begin to flow and move. And sometimes you're doing things that you've never really even thought of before while you do needling. If you're familiar with body work, you'll be familiar with this idea. You can go from one stroke to the next stroke to this, and all of a sudden you're doing something you never quite did before. And that's where there's a lot of creativity that can come in the needling. However, we really want to start by looking at the basics and looking at the fundamentals. And this needling technique is a basic. It's a real fundamental. The name of this technique is called cooling sky. Cooling sky is not a classical name. You're not going to go find it if you go into the Ling Shu or something like this. This name was developed by Andrew Nugent Head, who taught me this technique originally. Now, you'll find out in a moment that cooling sky is actually a great name. It's very appropriate. What this technique is about is it's about pulling qi down a channel. It's about draining excess in a channel. What can this excess be? Well, typically it can be something like excess qi. So there's tension coming up. There's a headache. There's a fullness of a grabbing qi in the head. Well, it can also be heat. Right now in DC, it's extremely hot, but we've come out of the allergy season. But a couple months back, we were solid in the allergy season, and DC itself has a ton of pollen in it, and trees from all over the world, believe it or not. So there is a lot of allergies that get provoked here. And so when you have a patient that comes in and they have red eyes and they're scratchy and itchy, this is a perfect technique. You can use it on a wide variety of symptoms. Your main primary thought about it is draining excess through a channel. That's the way I'd suggest you initially think about this technique. And again, some of the symptoms that you're going to think about using this on would be something like heat. The person's hot. Now, they could be physically hot. You can utilize this when a woman is having hot flashes, for instance. You can utilize this when a person is hot, when they're irritated, when they're agitated, when they're aggravated, and things are going up like this, and you want to drain them down. When you get down to it, though, you can use this all through the body. There's probably not an area of the body I have not used this technique on. I've used it on Asher points as well. I've used it along the bladder line. I use it all over the place. Now, some good points to go to practice this on, initially, I would suggest would be large intestine 11, great point. You can drain out of the head. I use this a lot. Now, in the future, I'd like to do a video specifically in Triple Energizer 3, great for sore throats. Let's see, other ones that are more common, I'll use this, say, on something like liver 3, spleen 6 down at the leg to drain qi down the leg. Other good places that might be a little less thought of would be bladder 11. I love this technique on bladder 11. Bladder 11 is really interesting because if you get it just right, you don't even need to do this technique. You're going to get a draining down the person's neck. And this is a point, and this is an area where I consistently get, how would you say, a lot of surprise from my patients. When I needle this point, bladder 11, and then I pull, and I do, as you'll see, the cooling sky technique, what they'll feel is just a really wonderful draining coming out of their neck. And when they have neck tension through whether it's stress or there can be wind up there or other issues as well, it can drain it out. Matter of fact, I think Li Dongyuan said that bladder 11, a great shuttle back here, is excellent for draining chaotic qi out of the head. And from my experience, does a great job. So those are a few points that you might use this on. We're going to explore what the technique is in just a moment, but before we do that, I have to talk a little bit about acupuncture, well, acupuncture needles and how to hold the needle. So this is just like tip 1 and tip 2 of this video. So the first thing I have to talk about, and this actually warrants a whole video on its own, is the gauge of your needle. Now, when I went through acupuncture school, I never got taught about different gauges, what they can do. I had to kind of fumble around for a long time before I really started to figure out, and really until I was shown, hey Todd, try this gauge out. So what I have right here, this is my demo needle for this. It's longer. When I do the actual demonstration, I'm going to imagine that we're doing it on large intestine 11. Now, this needle here is 75 millimeters long. So I'm typically not needling large intestine 11 with a 75 millimeter needle. I mean, you're welcome to. You got a lot of room to go if you want to. But this is good for demonstration purposes. Now this gauge itself, I'll bring it up a little closer to the camera and then my head I'll get it cut off, but I'll come on back down here, is actually this gauge, if you can see it clearly, is a pretty thick one. This is a 0.50 gauge. Now, when you go out shopping for your needles, you're going to have to actually look pretty hard to find something this thick. You can easily find something that's 0.30 in DBC or a wide range of other needles. You can also find some that are 0.35, just kind of on the open market. To get something that's going to be a little bit bigger, and we'll talk about in a second, you have to look a little harder, but it's not that bad. You can find on eBay. I've gotten this, and this is an EACU needle. EACU, excellent. It's like the, how do I say, the champagne of needles. Smooth, effervescent, it just grasps the chi. There's no barbs on it. It's really worth the price. It's a little pricier than most. This would run, depends upon the gauge and the length, but say a 0.40 40 millimeter needle, which is sort of like my bread and butter of needling, that's going to run you, I think it's something like $6 for 100. So it's definitely more pricey than say DBC when you get a pack of 1,000 for 20 bucks. But these are high quality, superior needles. Now, gauges, that's what I wanted to get to here. Now, when you are doing different needle techniques, gauge matters. There are certain needle techniques that I cannot seem to get to work. I shouldn't say there's techniques, but certain points and activating them in certain ways that I cannot get them to do with a thinner needle. Now, this could be lack of my skill, or it could be that you need to really have an extra punch in there to get it to go. In my practice, I typically use 0.30 DBC needles from time to time, and also 0.40 gauge needles. There's some from DBC or Dongbang Company, and then also the EACUs, like I said, are my favorite. So when you're looking at needling, the thicker your gauge, the easier it is to grasp your chi. When I was first coming out of acupuncture school, I got this crazy thought in my head that what I want to do is I want to learn how to needle with a thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner gauge. And I thought that would just make my needling skills better. And maybe it would. But what I found was that when I went thicker and thicker and thicker, all of a sudden my acupuncture became stronger, stronger, stronger. It doesn't necessarily mean that it hurts more. I'll freehand 0.40 needles all day long, And in many cases, you're actually going to get a smoother insertion than when you use a guide tube. So that's something that if you're at home, you don't quite believe it, you got to just do it for yourself and see, test it out with your patients. It takes a little bit of time to learn freehand needling, but when you're good at it, it's more consistently better than a guide tube. Guide tube will almost always have that little prick to it, but you can freehand smooth like butter when you get good at it. Any which way. So, needle gauge, the thicker you go, the easier it is to freehand. Also, the easier it is to grasp and control the chi of your patients. If you're new at acupuncture, you've been out for a year or two, or if you're a student, I would suggest you go thicker. If you don't want to do freehand needling and you're a little worried about getting to a real thick needle, go get yourself a pack of DBC 0.30 gauge. If you want to explore a little bit, try these EACUs and go for 0.40. You will not be disappointed. Okay, so that's a little bit about needle gauge. That does make a difference, by the way, because if you're doing this technique I'm showing you and you're using a little light green sarin, that's like 0.00001 or something like this, I don't know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But if you pull out a DBC 0.30, get an EACU 0.40, it's going to work like that. Okay, now, the one other thing I wanted to add here, tip number 2, is how to hold your needle. Again, maybe I just didn't learn when I was in school, but I can't recall people telling me really how you want to hold the hilt of your needle. So what I used to always do is hold it like this. And this is not the way you want to hold your needle. The way you want to look at holding your needle is more like this. And I'll show you why. When you hold your needle like this and you're doing needling like that, what's happening is the movement of your arm, and we'll just call that chi, goes this way, hits this, and has to do a right angle straight down. Well, that gives you an area where that curve, that angle going straight down just blocks the chi. You lose sensitivity and you lose power. So what will end up happening is you can't control it the right way or as well as you should be able to control it. When you turn your needle where it's in an alignment with your fingers, what happens is all of a sudden the needle, your hand, and everything forms a much more beatific curve or form. So there is less chi and less sensitivity that's lost. So as you're needling, everything moves in the same direction, like this. If you're needling like this, you have to kind of do this thing, and all of a sudden you're moving from your elbow. It's hard to get your shoulder into it, but this is how I was needling for years. Hopefully you're not making that mistake. If you are, try adjusting your needle, and I bet you're going to feel a good difference in control and sensitivity to your chi. And after all, that's what we need as acupuncturists. Okay, so let's see. I think that's enough for our tips. Now what we're going to do is come around and show the technique. Okay, now what I have here is my acupuncture needle that I use on troublesome patients, or just a chopstick for demonstration purposes. This is going to show up much better on the film. We will do the technique a couple times so you can see it. I'm going to use a needle as well. Matter of fact, what I should do is start off with an acupuncture needle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the technique, then we're going to talk about it for a second and break it down. Then I'm going to do it again, but with a chopstick, and then I'll do it a third time with a needle. So this first time is just for you to take a look and see what I'm doing. So I'll describe just a few of the initial things I'm doing. First of all, when you're finding your acupuncture point, it's very important to always palpate with your off hand. The reason being is, and this comes more into play with things like Asher points. If you palpate with your right hand or your dominant hand that you're going to needle with, you find your acupuncture point, and then you're like, okay, there it is. There's the Asher point. Then you have to release, grasp, and find again. And I went through probably a good year, year and a half just screwing that up all the time, where I palpate, I find it with my dominant hand, because it was a little bit easier. Then I get the needle, I put it here, and I got to refine, I missed it, and I find it again. So I've trained myself to palpate with my left hand, and I've just developed a sensitivity where now I find it very easily. So what you want to do, use your non-dominant hand, find your acupuncture point. Now I do freehand. We're not going to go into all the different kind of how to do freehand needling. There's all different sorts of ways to sort of break that skin or get that sensation to diffuse very quickly, so you don't get a sharp one, you just get a smooth insertion. But I'm just going to come here and I'm going to do a little boom, insertion, boom, painless. My patient was fine, it didn't say a thing. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert. Now I'm going to insert and imagine that I'm needling large intestine 11. Now, when you're needling large intestine 11 for this technique, what I would suggest is, well, anytime you're doing a new technique, don't worry about where the point is. Find it however you find it. What I mean is, I'm going to tell you where I find large intestine 11 roughly. I'm going to also tell you where you might want to go instead of the official large intestine 11 in certain cases as well. But don't worry about that when you do this for the first time. You have too much on your plate when you're doing a new technique. But what we're doing in this technique is essentially grasping qi in the channel, not necessarily the point. Now, there's a lot of talk and discussion we can have around that, which is very important, and I highly recommend you begin to ponder, if you don't already, the difference between an acupuncture point and a channel. They're very important. It's a very important distinction. But we're needling and we're trying to get the channel. So I'm going to insert the needle and continue until I get a thickness. I get that thickness, I go, aha, we're there. Now, I haven't done the technique yet. The technique is coming, but we still have to get to the channel point, whatever you want to call it, and we still have to grasp the qi. So we got to describe that a little bit, and then I'm just going to smoothly do the technique. Then, as I come in, I get to that thickness, I advance a little further. Ooh, it feels juicy. This is a good one. I can tell this is going to be amazing for my patient, Mr. Pillow. Then I'm going to grasp the qi. Now I've entered the channel. I know the qi is thick. I know it's there. Now I'm going to grasp it. Now a lot of people, the way they grasp qi with a needle is they twirl the needle. I'm not going to twirl the needle. I'm going to do what's called a J hook. So I'm going to go in, I'm in the channel, I'm going to lean the needle like sideways. I'm not pulling it back, I'm not advancing it forward. I'm going to lean the needle into it a little bit and then pull. And that's the J hook. Right. So, another perfect insertion. Advance the needle. I get to the channel. Now I'm going to J hook, grasp the qi. Now, watch closely. This is the technique. Are you watching? Oh my God. Amazing. I mean, the qi is just, this is like so intense. It's really amazing. I am moving so fast here. It's like light speed. Did you catch that? Now, I'm kind of playing. In reality, that might be what it looks like when you're doing this technique. When you're working with qi in the channels, little motions mean a great deal typically. Now, what I'm going to do is I have to stop, break it all down, and show you actually what am I doing here. That's what this video is about. This is just sort of a little bit of a play, one to introduce freehand needling a touch, looking for the channel, grasping the qi with a J hook, and then pulling. Now, what the actual technique is, when I did it here, I was playing a little bit just to show that you really don't have to show it on a big level for it to be working, and then sometimes be working very well and very strongly at that. So what we want to do is for a second step back and think, what is the purpose, what is the intention of this technique? And the intention is to draw excess qi down the channel. Now, we insert, perfect, we grasp the qi, and now we're pulling. And so what we want to do is we need to maintain a firm grasp of qi on our needle. That's why we do a good J hook. We J hook it in, so we J hook it in, and then what we're doing is we are now pulling like this. It's very simple. It's very simple. Now remember what video 3 and video 4 are about. Video 3 is about how to use your second hand. So you can see everywhere right from the beginning when I go to needle, all of a sudden my second hand's there. My second hand's automatically doing. When I'm searching for the channel, my second hand is helping. When I'm grasping, this offhand is grasping. It's doing the exact same thing, and it's pulling. We're going to explore that in the next video, but I think it's just important to see that. And lastly, what I'm also doing too is even when I'm inserting with my hip. When I'm needling with my back foot. When I'm advancing, I'm advancing with my whole right side is advancing the needle. It's not just my fingers, right? I'm moving everything. And that's important just to understand. Because when you do that, you're incorporating more and more and more of you into that needle technique. And that's where you layer on various, avenues of your action, avenues of your intention into the channel, into your acupuncture. And that's where your acupuncture increases in power the more you do that. So, what you do, insert, advance, find the chi of the channel. Now you're in it. J-hook grasp, and you pull, pull, pull. And ideally, you're just going to lean back. We call this italics. And in the 4th video, we'll really get into italics in more detail. Italics is just like where you have letters like the letter I. And normally the letter I is just like this. Italics, boop, it's leaning over a little bit. It has a sense of movement. Sometimes you're actually moving, and sometimes the needle is really coming out of the person. It's backing up, backing up, backing up, backing up. Or sometimes it's just a sense of it. It's just in there and it's juicy and you got the chi and you're pulling. So I hope you get the basic idea. Now, what we need to do is talk one moment about what you actually do when you're practicing this technique and also what you should be looking for when you're doing it. So, like I said, this technique is about draining excess out of the body, typically, or out of a channel. Typically, we're just going to kind of put this into a real generic moment. So we're going to pretend that this is our patient right here. Our patient's name is Mr. Pillow. Now, I work in DC, so I get a lot of people that work on Capitol Hill, things like that. They work for the government. So we'll just imagine that this person here, our patient, Mr. Pillow, is maybe a staffer. And they work in Congress, and it is a nut house right now. It's crazy. This person comes in, and they're coming in because they have high blood pressure. They get red faces. They're really angry all the time. They get bad allergies with itchy eyes. You see where this is going? Maybe they get a couple strokes every week. You know, it's really like a rough thing. And then he's got to deal with Mitch McConnell. So you kind of understand why, maybe. Any which way, enough of the political talk. So here we have a person, and they have excess, whatever that looks like, up, and we're just going to say in their head. Now, you can select a ton of different points for this. Today, we're just going to look at a very classic point for draining heat, and that's large intestine 11. So here we are, we're going to needle it, and we're going to apply cooling sky technique. Now, just like I said before, we're going to do our initial insertion, boom, free hand, free hand, goes in perfectly. Mr. Pillow doesn't feel a thing. We get the channel, J-hook it, and now we're going to apply our technique. But this is the important and crucial part here. You want to make sure that your technique is working. So you want to look for signs that it's working. Mr. Pillow's coming in with red face, with red eyes. Well, as we're draining large intestine 11, which is a very good general point to drain out of the head with, it covers a very wide area. You can think about it like that. As opposed to, say, like the triple energizer channel, which isn't grasp as much of a wideness. It can maybe get to the throat, get to the ear, and a few other places, but large intestine 11 has a real broad, that large intestine channel has a real broad impact. And now when you're doing the technique, and this is very important when you're practicing, but also when you're good at it, you want to make sure it's working. So you might ask your patient, how do you feel? So that's a very open-ended question. You can do that. You can also say, do you feel like you're relaxing? And they might say yes. Maybe they have some jaw tension. You can say, well, move your jaw around a little bit, see how that feels. And they go, oh yeah, my TMJ is better, right? You could be draining out of the more of the yang ming. And I would do sinuses, I'd be using stomach 40 typically, but you can ask, is the pressure draining out of your head? You want to ask the patient, and you want that to be happening while you needle. While you're applying this technique, you want the effect to occur. In an ideal world, when you do this and you apply it and you get that drain, you should be able to take the needle out and be confident that the job was done. You don't have to leave it there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. You just move the chi in such a way where you got your action. Now, you're welcome to leave needles in. I do it all the time. But when you practice this technique, my suggestion is you do it in such a way where you get the results like that. And when you can do that well, then you have the option of leaving it in, or maybe for time or for whatever purpose. You don't need to. And that's very important. So what I encourage you to do is talk to your patient, engage with them, interface with them as you're needling to see if you're having that effect. There have been plenty of times where I'm needling and it's like the whole world is opening up. I feel like this is the best needle I've ever done. I mean, my mind is expanding. It's like I'm steeped in some sort of psychedelic haze and the heavens are opening up and all of this. And I'm like, oh my God. And I ask the person, how are you doing? And they're like, I don't know, don't notice anything yet. I mean, what a letdown. But in the end, you have to trust how you're feeling, but the results are really what happens to your patient. And when you're applying this technique and other techniques that I might show, you want the effects to happen like that. The effects should happen very quickly, powerfully, and they should feel it right there in a tangible way. So, what you want to do is when you're needling a patient and you're doing cooling sky, you want to ask them how they're feeling. You can also observe. On large intestine 11, it's easy to actually observe when they have a red face or red neck to see that drain out. So you want to look for that. If they're red, you want to see that redness drain. If their eyes are itchy, you want to see or ask them, are your eyes less itchy now? You want to have that change happen right then and there. All right, now let's see. Let's do this technique. So now we have, and I'll throw a little detail in there. I'm going to throw a little bit of what you can say is a little bit of a wrench in the whole system. So this was about, I think, three or 4 weeks ago. I had a sore throat. Now my wife is a wonderful acupuncturist and she wanted to treat me. So I thought, this is great. I'm going to get a really good treatment. And part of it was going to be large intestine 11. Now I do some strength training. So she needled me where you would find large intestine 11. On that elbow crease, right over here, she found a juicy point, needled it, and it was damn strong. But it wasn't the kind of strength I needed. What she did was she found a sinew, and she needled the sinew. And what happened was the sinew lit up. Now this is great if she wanted to say, open up my forearms, help my wrists a little bit. They get kind of jammed up from doing a lot of grip strength, from working with patients manually. So that would have been great for that. But it didn't fit the intention of cooling and draining from my throat. So when you're dealing with a patient who has a stronger forearm. They might be a massage therapist. They might be somebody who does a lot of strength training. Even if you just hit the gym and do calisthenics and say just regular weights, what will happen is you'll develop some forearm tension. And when you go to clear and drain, if you hit that, it's not going to do it. It's going to do a completely different thing. But this technique is more about the channel than the point. So what you would do is you would just go a little bit north, a little bit proximal to large intestine 11, so you're technically on the upper arm. That's fine. You don't need to be on the point. You need to grasp the channel. You can probably do this down here, up here. As long as you're on large intestine 11, you have the chance to grasp that chi and drain the channel with cooling sky. So what I'd recommend from a real life example, and I've done this with patients as well. I did this a couple weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, in a patient. Does a lot of strength training. I think he goes to CrossFit. And I was literally doing the same thing that my wife was doing to me, except boom, I hit his sinew. And I thought, damn. Took the needle out, moved it up there. It worked like a charm. So when you're looking for this, you can go wherever you find your large intestine 11, but if it really lights up on somebody, move proximal, just a hair, and you'll be able to grasp the channel there. Okay, so that's a third tip today. All right, so finally, we're going to do this. I'm going to talk it out. We're going to do it. I'm going to accentuate my body movements so you see how it's going. And I have the needle. So what we're going to do is do a nice freehand insertion, large intestine 11. Patient didn't feel a thing. I advance, right? And so my second hand presses in just a little bit. My body moves forward just a little bit. I'm moving from my back foot in. I'm advancing with my whole body. I find the thickness of the channel and I move with it. You don't have to move a lot. I do the J hook and I'm J hooking with my hips too. Everything's moving. Everything's moving, right? You only need to J hook once, but everything's moving. I grasp the chi and now I'm pulling. Now I'm going to pull like this. I'm going to move in this direction. I'm also going to be moving up a little bit. And then my hand is going to be lifting. My second hand is going to be lifting at the same time. So what does that mean? If I'm going to go up, I have to first go down. So I'm inserting. I'm actually bending my knees just a little bit. I'm grasping. I'm pulling this way. And then I'm going to go. So I went down, and here I'm going to go back and up. But I'm going to do it in a very controlled way. And as I go up, I'm going to be lightening the pressure with my second hand up, as well as pulling it down the channel. Everything is in harmony. Now at this point, I'm getting off balance slightly. I mean, I can still pull effectively here, but from a level, I'm getting my hip is too far out here. Now, I'm moving more than I normally would move, just for demonstration purposes. But let's just say you're going, and you don't quite grasp the chi, or you ask your patient, how do you feel? Go, oh, no, I don't feel anything. Well, go back again, advance again, grasp some more. Sometimes you have to pull 2 or 3 or 4 times to really get it going. It's like maybe the engine's cold. You gotta really rev it a bit before you get it going. So here, and then we grasp it and we pull. And I say, how do you feel? Mr. Pillow says, I feel great. Oh, do you feel a little cooler? He goes, yeah, I do feel cooler. And I said, how does your throat feel? I give a couple swallows. Oh, it's not sore anymore, he says. Isn't that great? How are your eyes? Are they scratchy still? He blinks a little bit. They're not scratchy at all. Oh, isn't that fantastic? Great technique. All right, so that was cooling sky. So do a real quick recap here. Cooling sky. You're going to utilize this for excess in the channel that you want to drain down from the channel. Good points that you can use. Start with large intestine 11. Very easy to work with. You can go to other points. This is great on liver 3. You want to drain it out of the whole body. Ton of liver cheese stagnation, or whatever you like to call it. Drain it all out. Other ones, I love to do this on lung 6. Oh my God, this thing will open up the chest like no one's business. Large intestine 11, lung 6, kratom form, triple energizer 9. Oh my God, I'll open up ears all day long at that point. And of course, you can use it all throughout the limbs, all down the body. You can also consider using it in places where instead of pulling this way through the channel, you're pulling up. So on the abdomen as well. You can do cooling sky on the abdomen. You could do it all over the place. Any which way, please, when you have an opportunity, try this in the clinic. Give it a shot. See what it's like. Post your comments below. If you have any questions on it, if there's something you don't get, if I didn't really show this or explain this all that well, definitely take some time, shoot me a direct message, put it in the comments. Maybe I can refilm something, help you out. I really want to make sure that this is clear, you can take it, and you can use it for yourself. Excellent. If you liked any of this, add a comment below. Take a look at my other videos. I got 2 more coming out soon. You can also check out a class that I'll be teaching, orthopedic acupuncture. It's going to be the foundations of orthopedic acupuncture, low back pain. It's going to be this fall, 2019, in Washington, D.C. I believe the dates are September 21st and 22nd. That class is going to be excellent. The focus is on lower back pain, but what we'll also go through, as we look at that, you'll look at hip pain, knee pain, the whole leg system. The cool part of this is it's going to be based on looking at the leg sinew channels and their relationship to back pain. There's so many times I treat back pain by just treating the leg. I like to go to the back too. That's important. Hips important. A lot of other places are important. But it's good to be able to look at it, pain, especially something like low back pain, from a channel perspective. When you start to do that, if you're not already doing that, when you start to do that, it'll take patients that just, oh, they get that nagging back pain. It's much better. I come in like, every other week and you keep me in a good place and it's nice. It'll take those patients and put them in a place where they go, oh, I don't have to come in again. Which might not be good for your bottom line, but it'd be good for them. Anyway, I'm kind of joking about that. But it's going to take your success numbers and just take them up a notch or 2. Great. Also, if you like any of what I'm describing here, check out Andrew Nugent Head. He has a lot of great videos on YouTube. You can also take a look at his website, ats.com, Association of Nutritional Studies. Wonderful. Well, I really hope you appreciated this and look forward to the other videos, and have a great day.